Today, we're talking about what is probably the most important indicator in Canada's housing market: housing starts. They give us a better picture of upcoming housing supply and shape our analysis, insights, and forecasts. But what exactly are housing starts? Why do they matter? How do they impact important decisions across the economy and the housing system?
We consider a housing structure as started when concrete has been poured and the foundation is completed, not before. This applies to all types of structures, from single-family homes to multi-unit towers. Our experience has taught us that this is the most reliable indicator that a project will be completed. Once the concrete is poured, the project is much less likely to be cancelled than when the ground is simply broken. And this has always been the way CMHC counts a start.
Housing starts are a critical indicator of current and future construction and economic activity. They contribute to the estimate and forecast of GDP by Statistics Canada. They're used by the Bank of Canada for its assessment of the economy, which is critical for its monetary policy. Many levels of government follow this indicator closely for their own planning purposes.
When we see an increase in starts, it means more construction jobs, more materials, and eventually more homes down the pipeline. We also use them to gauge past economic and business sentiment. When the economy is strong, more developers invest in construction. When developers feel less optimistic, we see more delayed projects. With large-scale projects, housing starts can reflect decisions made up to 1 to 2 years ago. It takes time for big projects to move from the boardroom to the construction site. Further delays can be caused by challenges with factors like financing, labor, materials, approvals, and permits.
We primarily collect this data by tracking building permits issued by municipalities. Field enumerators visit construction sites and record all new starts. Our starts survey is based on a census and not a sampling. We release the data and brief analysis on the 11th working day of the next month. Now that we've seen how important housing starts are, let's walk through how to interpret them.
To begin with, it's useful to get a very basic view of where starts are occurring. In other words, the geographical breakdown. We're also interested in the characteristics of the building, whether it's single detached or an apartment, and for apartments, the tenure, rental or condominium tenure. Once we have a good mapping of how the starts are distributed according to geography, building type, and tenure, we look into the numbers themselves. Starts data gets reported to us in two basic formats. The first is the level of construction. These are either expressed as raw data, that is the actual numbers that our enumerators record, or seasonally adjusted data, which is an estimate that enables us to account for what we call seasonal differences. The second format refers to the pace of construction. We take the seasonally adjusted level and multiply it by 12, which we call the seasonally adjusted at annual rates, or SAR.
Think of seasonally adjusted data, or the SAR, this way. If you're driving at 100 kilometers an hour, it means that you will travel 100 kilometers if you keep that speed for 1 hour. So getting back to housing, if we say the SAR in July is 250,000, it means that if housing starts follow the pace recorded in July for 12 months, 250,000 housing units will have been started. It doesn't mean that 250,000 homes have been started in July. To get that number, we'd refer to the actual starts recorded that month. But given the highly irregular nature of apartment starts, we also need to look at the 6-month trend to get a clearer picture.
The 6-month average is a statistic that we introduced more than a decade ago when apartment construction was taking a more dominant share of starts. Why did we introduce it? Because apartment construction can be irregular, creating large spikes and dips in activity, making it challenging to interpret. Focusing on the trend measure gives us a better indication of activity. We publish a variety of numbers because so many different groups use the data. Some users require the actual monthly raw data for business planning purposes. Others are interested in tracking the rate or speed of starts as a contributor to estimating the pace of the economy and will use the SAR. If you're interested in the trend, the 6-month moving average is your best bet. At the end of the day, the type of indicator you use should correspond to your needs.
It's clear that CMHC's housing starts is a critical tool, not just for the housing sector, but for the economy as a whole. What's also clear is that users of the data must ensure that the metric they are using truly responds to their needs. A housing start isn't just a number. It's a signal for jobs, markets, and homes on the horizon. Check the video description for useful links to stay up to date on CMHC's monthly housing starts data.